think the main point is to get yourself to a place where you're table focused instead of cooking and food focused. So I think the beautiful magic is happening around the table. It doesn't matter how that food gets there. So did people bring it with them when they walked in the door? Did a pizza delivery man deliver it? Did you stop at a dumpling shop and get dumplings and put it out there in plastic containers? It doesn't matter how that's happening. Yeah. So I think don't ever let a fear of cooking or preparing your own food stop you from the experience of what a table experience can be in somebody's life or in your life.
Yeah, I love that. That's so helpful to put it in those terms. So when we're talking about, it's not just food, it's about being at the table.
Yeah.
Why do you think that being at the table is healing? You know, we're obviously having this conversation, sort of the broader conversation we're having is around, you know, finding ourselves in a place of grief or trial or crisis, and some of what that brings up in our own faith and doubt.
Yeah.
What is it about the table that we can go to as a place for just including the table in our healing process?
Yeah. Well, I think when you think about what our lives are like, how often in a day are we actually connecting with other people? I think that's a good question to ask ourselves, because I think often we aren't until we're sitting at the table for a meal, or sitting at a small table to have a coffee or a cake. So it just so happens that these are the points of connectivity. And when you think about a historical community where their lives had so much less leisure built into it compared to us. I mean, so much less. So you're waking up at sunup, you're working until a meal, and then you're sitting down. And that's where the relational component is happening. So if you think even about Jesus and the context that Jesus is living in Palestine, this is the context where they're working. And then mealtime is where they sit down to connect. And so a meal is sort of the built-in leisure time for non-modern people. Now we're modern, and so leisure is kind of like our thing. But even though we have leisure, we're still busy. We're still busy. And so I think the reason the table functions in a way that is healing or can be healing is simply because it's the space that we have set aside to say we're focusing on someone other than ourselves and other than our tasks.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So when you are in a place of grief or difficulty or heartache, obviously our relationship with food can be tricky. We can use food in really unhealthy ways to sometimes we don't nourish ourselves, or sometimes overindulge ourselves. And, you know, we have all sorts of things that we grapple with in terms of food and grief and all of that. And I know that's not exactly what we're talking about today, but I wonder, Devi, you know, for someone who is finding themselves in a place right now where they are craving connection, where they are in some sort of pain, where they're wanting to heal, and this idea of the table is appealing to them, you know, what would you say? How do you start? How, if you've not found that before, is there something you talked about, just being intentional? You know, do you invite yourself over? Do you invite other people over? You know, what is the thing? And can you comment on, you know, when you're in pain, it's hard to step out. It's hard to ask for what you need. So what would you say to that woman or that man that's already struggling but wants and needs this?
Yeah. Look, first of all, I'd say I'm so sorry. It is so hard to be in that place. And I have felt that way in every stage of the last 10 years of our life. So I remember showing up in Geneva. And one of the great griefs of that time was that nobody was necessarily inviting me to their house or doing those kinds of things for me. It was absolutely a grief, like an enormous grief. And that's part of what turned me into creating the life that I wanted other people to make for me. I decided, okay, I'm just going to have to make it for myself or for others. And I felt that way in Sweden. I feel that way still in Melbourne. We will always feel that way. I think sometimes it's the goal for me isn't always just to stop feeling that way. It's just to keep moving. And I think I'm so sorry that you're experiencing this, but I think if the choice is not having it and feeling sad about it, or taking a risk, whatever that could mean, that could be many different options.
Mm-hmm.
Are you satisfied with just feeling sad about it and not doing anything? If the answer is no, then I think it's worth exploring. What is the first little risk? But I
Mm-hmm.
will say, express that grief. I'm going to guess many of your speakers are going to be saying this, but I do think like you have to express it. Express the fact that you feel sad that nobody has done X, Y, and Z for you.
Yeah.
And then if you're able to express that to a really safe person, express that to a safe person
Mm-hmm.
and start there as well. But I think one of the big takeaways for me in my life is a moment when I was with somebody, and this isn't a food story, but I was with someone and I just remember feeling this sense of I need to reach out to her.
Mm-hmm.
And everything in me said, Devi, you can't, because it had been years of just not knowing if I had emotional capacity. I was grieving. I had postpartum depression. I had so many different things going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the voice in my head said, you've not tried to do anything for the last 4 years. Has that worked?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer was like, no, it hasn't worked. Okay. Why don't you? And I mean, I think that was God talking to me in that moment. And the fun part about it is that she and I did not connect at all. So that was just a fun moment, but I took a risk. But I think it was worth it for that moment of going, okay, if what you've tried for years doesn't work, then maybe it's time to try something new.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what I would say is grieve, name your grief, but be willing to take one little step forward and then just see what kind of happens next.
Yeah, that's really wonderful advice. I know my husband Ryan and I have experienced recurrent miscarriages. And
Right.
after our second miscarriage in particular, we did not have the support, the in-person support that we needed or wanted, desired. And it was just due to where we were living and other factors. But we were so angry. We felt so angry. We felt so abandoned. You know, one of the things that ministered to us so much after our first one were the meals, being invited for meals or dropped off meals, just food. The ministry of food is not to be, underrated. But that second time we felt really abandoned, and we felt like, oh, we got all this outpouring on Facebook, but no one's at our actual doorstep, and we were so angry in our grief. And I remember so vividly this conversation that we had where we were both expressing our anger, to one another. And my husband in particular, he's a very patient man. He was so angry. And I just remember being taken aback a little bit, like, oh, he's actually as angry as I am. He might even be more angry. And we felt so ripped off. Right. And, but in that moment, we just kind of, it's hard to describe other than and I don't want to sound like we were just bootstrapping our way out, because we weren't. We were desperate, but we also went, you know what? If the church doesn't show up, like, we can't just be mad. We have to be the church that shows up. So if no one does it for us, at least we can do it for other people. Like, we have to own our part of being the one that shows up with the casserole, or being the one that shows up with the donuts. And I think that for us it was a really crystallizing time for us we already knew this was important, but there was something about sort of feeling that sense of abandonment and betrayal. Maybe betrayal is a hard word, but that's what it felt like at the time. And I mean, and so for us though, but to be able to kind of rechannel that and go, look, if it's not going to come to us, we're just going to go, that sucks, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to go to others anyway. And it's really changed our approach to community and life around the table is we don't just wait to be invited anymore. We do the inviting. We always have, but we do a lot more intentionally now.
Yeah. Yeah, I so resonated with what you just said. So in I had a baby at sort of 10 and a half months after we got married, in a new city. And my expectation in every church I had been a part of is that you get meals, like you just get meals delivered. And there was none of that. Like I didn't even, and I was so shocked. And Adriel, like what you were saying about the rage, like I was so angry. That's a very real response to that feeling of, I expected this situation to be different because this is a situation where I deserve to be taken care of.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound nice to say that, but it is how we feel like in that moment. And I think what it created, and that rage, I don't know that the rage ever went away, but what it built in me is an empathy for people who are going through the same situation. So that anytime I meet a woman who has moved with a new baby anywhere, my immediate response to her is, what do you need? And some of them haven't needed anything, but I know immediately, like, you got to take her a meal. And every time I do, it's like giving my 29-year-old lost in Geneva woman a meal as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I love that.
we heal ourselves by working to heal others too.
Yeah, we really do. And that is so true. And I think we can sort of compartmentalize our healing and go, well, this is me healing and this is me serving.
Yeah.
But if we're able to see that it is all interconnected and that your well-being and my well-being are interconnected, that we can serve in the middle of our own pain and know that even that act, can be a part of our own healing.